Hey guys, in today's video, we'll meet Sterling Aldridge, a car restorer who died and came back with incredible revelations about God, aliens, and the interconnectedness of everything. What he saw on the other side will challenge everything you believe. So, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss any details of this exciting story. My name is Sterling Aldridge. I have always been a skeptical, practical man, focused on the details of the tangible world. Restoring classic cars was my refuge, my way of finding meaning in a life that, to be honest, had become empty since my divorce. That afternoon, I was behind the wheel of a 1957 Ford Thunderbird, a true jewel that I had brought back to life with my own hands. The road stretched out in front of me, the engine roared, and for a brief moment I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Genuine joy. The sky was clear, the sunlight reflected off the car's chrome paint, and everything seemed perfect, until it wasn't anymore. As I sped down a country road outside of Aurora, Colorado, I realized too late that the approaching curve was steeper than I expected. The steering wheel seemed to resist my input, and before I could react, the rear wheel skidded on the loose gravel. It all happened in the blink of an eye. The car spun, overturned, and went down an embankment. The sound of metal twisting and glass shattering was deafening. My body was thrown against the steering wheel and dashboard with brutal force, and the pain was so intense that it soon left me, as if I had crossed some limit. Everything became quiet. Suddenly, I was no longer in the car. It was above him, floating, looking down at the scene with impossible clarity. I saw my body trapped in the wreckage, inert, with my head tilted to the side. Am I dead? I thought. But there was no fear, just a strange curiosity and a sense of calm. The landscape around me seemed surreal. The blue sky was more vibrant than I had ever noticed, and every detail of the scene seemed magnified, as if my field of vision were infinite. I could see the small stream that ran alongside the road and even the wind stirring the branches of the trees in the distance. It was then that I felt it. Something was pulling me up, as if an invisible and irresistible force was calling me. The sky began to change. An intense light appeared, rotating and expanding, forming a vortex of energy that seemed to swallow me. "This is not the end," a voice, almost a whisper, seemed to say. As I was pulled upwards, my consciousness seemed to expand along with the sky. The gravity that I have known all my life no longer makes sense. There was no weight, just movement. The world below began to disappear, becoming smaller and more distant, as if looking at it from a plane that ascended without limits. What was above me was both familiar and indescribable. A spiral of brilliant light slowly rotated, with colors so vibrant that no human palette could reproduce them. The vortex had a structure that defied logic, mixing pulsating stars, translucent orbs, and currents of energy that seemed to intertwine like a dance. In the center, a white light radiated, bright but welcoming, like the sun that warms but never burns. I felt like I was drawn there not by choice, but by design. It wasn't a feeling of loss of control, but of surrender. Everything felt as natural as breathing. As I moved towards that portal, I realized I was not alone. Little flashes of light passed by me like comets, coming and going through the vortex. It was like a constant flow of consciousness, a pulse that sustained the entire cosmos. Every time one of these lights passed by me, I felt a slight wave of emotion, joy, regret, love. Suddenly I asked myself, is this heaven? Before the doubt completely set in, I heard something. It wasn't sound in the conventional sense, but something that resonated inside me, like a deep echo. "Fear not," said the voice, soft and immense at the same time. Images began to form around me, entire galaxies spinning, stars being born and dying, planets teeming with life. I saw things that I couldn't understand, but that seemed familiar somehow. My mind wanted to ask questions, but the answer was already there, as if this place didn't need words. "Everything is connected," the voice whispered again, now clearer, closer. It was as if I were on the edge of infinity, about to cross into something beyond any human understanding. The central light was now closer, and I knew something or someone was there, waiting for me. As I passed through the heart of the vortex, I was enveloped by a light so intense that it seemed to be the very fabric of the universe. There was no fear, there was no doubt, just a feeling of acceptance so deep that it made me realize how small I was in the face of something so vast. The light began to condense, and a figure emerged from it. He was not a person in the traditional sense, but a presence, an entity formed of pure compassion and love. Even before I heard a word, I knew who it was. Something inside me screamed that I was before Christ, but he was not like the pictures painted on church walls or like the descriptions in religious texts. There was no beard or white robes, but his essence, the absolute love he radiated, was unmistakable. Sterling," he said, and my name resonated like a song, full of meaning. "You've always been looking for something, without even realizing it." I didn't know how to respond. Words seemed insignificant before him. Then he continued, "You sought control in a life that is, by nature, unpredictable. You built walls around your heart because you believed that would protect you, but those walls also isolated you. It was as if he was laying bare my soul. Every feeling I hid, every wrong choice I made was there, exposed, but not in an accusatory way. He was not a judge. It was a source of infinite understanding. Why is this happening to me? I managed to mutter, my voice sounding weak and distant. Because you needed to remember, he said. Remember that you are not alone, that you never were. Everything and everyone is connected, and you are part of something much bigger. I felt hot tears running down a face that was no longer physical. He came closer, and somehow, I could feel his touch. It wasn't pressure or heat, but a wave of peace that washed away every particle of who I was. You are forgiven, he said, and those words pierced my being like a key unlocking something long locked. All the guilt, the weight of the decisions I made, evaporated. But I failed so much, I replied, trying to argue, even though I knew it didn't make sense. Failing is part of who you are, he replied with a smile that seemed to contain the universe. You were made to learn, grow, and love. What matters is what you do from now on. And then, he showed me. It wasn't just a date. It was preparation for something much bigger that was yet to come. After feeling the entity's touch, everything around me changed. The light that used to surround me became a kind of infinite screen, where moments from my life began to appear, like scenes from a movie projected before me. But it wasn't just passive viewing. I was immersed in each of these moments, feeling every emotion that accompanied them, both mine and those of the people around me. It started with my childhood. I saw myself as a little boy, playing with my dad in the garage, learning the difference between a screwdriver and a wrench. I felt the admiration and love my father felt for me in that moment, a memory I had long forgotten. But then the review moved into more difficult times. I saw the first time I lied to a friend just to gain something for myself. I felt his confusion and pain, something I hadn't realized at the time. The pain shot through my chest like an arrow, as real as if it had happened right then. The review continued, taking me back to the years when I built my career as a classic car restorer, the days I worked late, neglecting my wife. I found myself yelling at her, being unfair, saying words that could never be taken back. But this time, in addition to seeing the scene, I felt what she felt, the hurt, the loneliness, and the feeling of being undervalued. This is cruel, I thought, trying to shake off what I was seeing. But the voice of Christ rang out, calm but firm. You are not here to judge yourself, but to understand. Only through understanding can you transform. There were good moments too. I saw it when I fixed the first car I bought with my own money and the joy it brought to the customer who purchased it. I felt the pride and love I invested in that work. These moments were like a respite, a reminder that I wasn't just my flaws. However, the most painful point was reliving the night my wife decided to leave me. I already knew she was unhappy, but I never fully understood how much. Reliving that moment, now from her perspective, was overwhelming. By the end of the review, I felt like I had faced the unvarnished truth of who I was. My heart was heavy, but at the same time, there was a ray of hope. Christ placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "Now you know, and with that knowledge comes the choice. Continue as you were, or live as you can be." The tears flowed freely, and for the first time in years, I felt something close to release. As soon as my life review ended, I felt the emotional weight begin to ease, as if a wound had been carefully tended after years of neglect. The light around me transformed again, this time revealing a vastness that seemed to have no end. It was as if I were hovering on the edge of the cosmos, observing a spectacle that transcended any human concept of space and time. Stars were born and died in explosions of dazzling light. Galaxies swirled like swirls of color, pulsing with a rhythm that seemed to be the beat of the universe itself. I saw planets with alien landscapes, mountains made of crystal, oceans that shone like liquid emeralds, and atmospheres of tones that defied any known spectrum. Suddenly, a question popped into my mind, as clear as if I had spoken it out loud. Are we alone? The answer came not in words, but in a sensation, a silent laughter that echoed through the cosmos, full of warmth and understanding, as if to say, of course not. Soon, visions began to form. I saw beings that were not human, but that did not cause me fear. Some were made of pure light, while others had shapes that looked like mixtures of animals and humans, but they all emanated something similar, a vibration of life, of purpose, of connection. I saw huge ships, like cities floating in space, moving in harmony through dimensions that seemed superimposed on our own. They are part of the same cycle as you, the voice of Christ explained, now closer, like a guide. All life, in all its forms, is connected. Each being, each world, contributes to universal balance. I was impressed. Everything I knew, or thought I knew, seemed so limited. The vastness of existence, the constant flow of energy and consciousness that tied everything together, was so much more than my earthly mind could comprehend. What about humanity? I asked. What is our role? You are a fragment of creation, but a fragment with unlimited potential, he replied. Your learning, your failures, your love, it's all part of something bigger. You have the power to create harmony or disorder. The universe watches and learns from you just as you learn from it. Then I was transported to an even deeper place. I saw lines of light connecting everything. Every star, planet, living being, every thought, even every choice that has ever been made or will be made. It was an infinite web of energy, and at the center of it all was the same light that brought me there. This is God, the voice said softly, not a separate entity, but everything that is and will never be, the entirety. I felt an overwhelming humility, but also a sense of purpose. I was part of it like everyone else. And my life, no matter how small, had an impact. You saw, Christ said, his presence now even more radiant. Now, live with what you've learned. After the enormity of the cosmic revelations, I felt that something was changing. The light around me began to dim, like a heavenly sunset, as Christ's voice remained steady and comforting. You still have work to do, he said, with a gentleness that seemed to fill my entire being. I didn't want to go. The space I was in was perfect, free from pain, guilt, or emotional weight. It was as if all my burdens had disappeared, and the thought of returning to the confusion and limitations of the physical world seemed unbearable. I can't go back, I murmured, my own voice sounding fragile. You must, Christ replied, with absolute certainty. The journey is not over yet. Your life is one thread in a much larger tapestry, and there are people who need you. As he spoke, I felt my spirit begin to be pulled, not up or down, but back. It was like being compressed, as if the vastness I had experienced was being forced into something small, limited. I'm not the same as I was before, I protested, but the response was just a calm smile and words that resonated deeply. You'll never be the same. Suddenly, the impact came. It was like being thrown against an invisible wall. I felt every part of my human body reconnect, as if a complex system was being rewired. My breath returned in a rush of pain, my lungs burning as they sucked in air. My heart was racing, each beat echoing in my mind. I opened my eyes. Everything was blurry, and for a moment, I didn't know where I was. Then the sounds came, the crunch of twisted metal around me, the wind blowing through the car's broken windows, and, in the distance, the sound of sirens. My entire body was in agony, but I was alive. I looked at my bloody hands and the broken glass around me, and I realized something. I was back, but there was something different. As terrible as the physical pain was, my heart held a peace I had never known before. It was then that I saw a face through the wreckage. It was a man dressed in a firefighter's uniform, his eyes full of determination as he reached for my hand. "Can you hear me?" he asked, his voice firm but full of empathy. I tried to respond, but my voice was barely a whisper. I spoke to God. The firefighter paused for a moment, as if my words had struck him deeply. He held my hand tighter. "You are alive. That's all that matters now." As he and his team worked to pull me out of the wreckage, I let myself be carried away. Something told me that this rescue was just the beginning of another journey. The sensation of being pulled from the wreckage was almost as surreal as what I had just experienced in the vortex. Everything seemed both incredibly real and distant at the same time. My body was trapped, crushed between the steering wheel and the seat, and every movement the firefighters made to free me sent waves of pain through my entire being. Despite this, a strange calm came over me. The firefighter who had held my hand, Jonas Calloway, looked determined. His eyes were steady, but there was something else there, a kind of understanding I hadn't expected from a stranger. "Hold on tight, Sterling," he said, calling me by name as if he already knew me. When I was finally pulled from the wreckage, I could see the condition of the car. The Ford Thunderbird, once my greatest masterpiece, was unrecognizable, reduced to a heap of twisted metal. For some reason, it didn't bother me. All that mattered was the fact that he was alive. I was placed on a stretcher and taken to the ambulance. During the journey between flashes of consciousness, I heard Jonas talking to another paramedic. He said he spoke to God, Jonas commented, his voice filled with curiosity and respect. The other paramedic chuckled softly, perhaps to ease the tension. "Everyone says that when they have a narrow escape," Jonas didn't respond, but I could feel he believed it. At the hospital, everything happened quickly. Surgeries, exams, medical conversations that seemed distant as I floated between pain and a strange state of serenity. My body was seriously injured. Broken bones, fractured ribs, compromised lungs. The doctors talked about recovery as a long and arduous process, but strangely enough, I didn't feel scared. It was during this time that I met Maggie Hartwell, the nurse who would become not only my caregiver, but a friend and confidant. From the moment I entered her ward, she seemed to sense that something about me was different. "You're Sterling Aldridge, right? The car restorer?" she asked one day while changing my bandages. I nodded, and she continued, "I heard you had an unusual experience in the accident." Her eyes met mine, and there was something in them that suggested she was familiar with the inexplicable. "It was more than out of the ordinary," I said, my voice weak. "I saw everything." I spoke to him. Maggie didn't laugh, nor did she dismiss what I said. Instead, she just smiled faintly. "I believe you, Sterling," she said. "Often, it is the experiences that almost take our life that end up showing us how to live it." Over the next few months, Maggie helped me not only heal my body, but also process what I had experienced. Jonas would visit occasionally, sharing his own stories of near-deaths during rescue operations, and slowly, I began to realize that the accident was not the end, but the beginning of something much bigger. My physical recovery was slow and painful, but what really challenged me was understanding the meaning of what I had experienced. I spent weeks in the hospital, my body still fragile and scarred, but something inside me was stronger than ever. The vortex, the cosmic revelations, the encounter with Christ, it all felt more real than the life around me, and yet I was back in the physical world, with all its imperfections. Maggie, with her infinite patience, was by my side every day. She was a practical woman, but there was something about her that conveyed a quiet wisdom. "Do you still think about what you saw?" she asked one afternoon, as she helped me take my first steps with a cane. "I think about it all the time," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "It's like I saw the plan behind everything, the interconnection of each thing, and now, returning to that reality feels limiting." She nodded, with a small smile. "That's because you've changed, Sterling. You can't see the world the same way after you've touched something so vast." As I regained my strength, I decided to revisit my workshop, even though I was still limping and in pain. As I opened the door for the first time in months, the familiar smell of oil and metal filled my lungs, bringing back a rush of memories. But something was different. The cars, which had once been my refuge, now seemed like symbols of something bigger. Every part I rebuilt, every engine I brought back to life, was a reflection of what had happened to me. Jonas visited me that same day. He was dressed in casual clothes, but still carried the solid presence of a firefighter. "I needed to check on you," he said, reaching out to me. "Getting better," I replied. "But honestly, I feel like I'm just now starting to understand what happened. Jonas smiled, with that look that said he knew more than he was willing to share. Sterling, you were spared for a reason. The question now is, what are you going to do with it? Those words stayed with me. Deep down, I knew he was right. My accident and near-death experience were not just random events. They were a calling, a second chance to live differently. I decided to transform my workshop into more than a workplace. I started using it as a community space, teaching young people how to fix cars and sharing my experiences with those who were open to listening. Some people found my story strange, but others, like Maggie and Jonas, understood the depth of what I was trying to convey. Every part I restored, every engine that came back to life, was a metaphor for my own journey. The Sterling that existed before the accident was transforming, not into something perfect, but into something more authentic, more connected. In the silence of the workshop, I often looked at the sky through the window, remembering the vortex. He was always there, invisible to the eye, but present in the back of my mind. As the months turned into years, I realized that my life had taken a turn that I never imagined before the accident. It wasn't just about physical recovery or getting back to what I considered normal. The truth was that I couldn't be the same anymore. The experience I had in the vortex was not something you could simply forget or relegate to a corner of your mind. However, carrying this memory was both a gift and a burden. There were times when I asked myself, why me? Why was I shown something so vast and incredible? What should I do with this knowledge? And every time, the answer came not in words, but in actions, small daily choices that demonstrated what I had learned. One of these moments happened late afternoon, when Maggie, Jonas, and I were in the workshop. I had started restoring another car, a 1958 Plymouth Fury. But this time, I decided to use the process as a living metaphor. I invited a group of local teenagers, many of them with difficult stories, to participate in the project. They arrived suspicious, but little by little, they began to open up, learning to work with tools and value collective effort. You're not just a car restorer, Sterling, Maggie said one day, as we watched the young men at work. You are restoring people. These words resonated with me as they captured exactly how I felt. The work I did with my hands now reflected what was happening inside me, a slow but profound transformation. Some days I would look up at the aurora sky and feel like I could see the vortex there, hidden behind the clouds or the stars. He had never abandoned me, and in quiet moments, I could feel the connection I had witnessed in that place. This connection, between myself, the people around me, and the universe at large, was something I carried with every breath. One day, Jonas shared something with me that sealed what I already knew. In the rescue, he began, when I held your hand, I felt something I had never felt before. You looked at peace, even on the brink of death. It made me realize that there is something much bigger than I can understand. And that's why we're here, I replied. Not to understand everything, but to live with what we know. And what we know is enough. Love, compassion, and responsibility. My mission was now clear. It wasn't about saving the world, but about impacting lives around me. One person, one gesture, one word at a time. The young people who came to the workshop kept coming back, and eventually, it became a meeting place, a space for learning and connection. Maggie and Jonas became pillars on this journey, each bringing something unique. Maggie's care, Jonas's strength, and my own story as testimony. In the end, my life wasn't perfect, but it was authentic. I had understood that the soul's journey does not end with death, but expands, intertwined with everything and everyone. The near-death experience showed me the universe, but it was in life that I found my true purpose. Now, whenever I look up at the sky, I know there is something much bigger. And although the vortex called me once, my mission here is not yet over. As the years continued to pass, I realized that my life was now guided by something much bigger than myself. Every choice I made, no matter how simple, seemed to have a deeper meaning, as if the interconnection I witnessed in the vortex was always there, guiding my steps. The young people who attended my workshop were a constant reminder of how small actions could transform lives. Many of them came from dysfunctional families or faced their own internal battles. One boy in particular, called Theo, left a deep impression on me. He was only 16, but he had already been through more than I could have imagined. Abandonment, violence, and a constant struggle with his own identity. Why do you care? Theo asked me one day while cleaning the engine of a 1970 Dodge Charger we were restoring together. His voice was filled with distrust. "Because someone cared for me when I needed it," I replied, my mind going back to Jonas's face holding my hand in the accident and Maggie's patience during my recovery. "And because we are all connected. When I help you, I am also helping myself." He didn't respond right away, but I saw something change in his eyes. It wasn't instantaneous, but over time, Theo began to open up. He told me his stories, his pains, and even his dreams, something he said he had never shared with anyone. Little by little, he began to believe that he could build something better for himself. These interactions were direct reflections of what I had learned in the vortex. Every choice, every act of kindness or compassion created ripples that reverberated far beyond ourselves. One quiet night, while closing the workshop, Jonas appeared. He had a thoughtful look on his face, as if he was carrying something he needed to share. "I never told you this," he began, "but the night of your accident, something happened to me. When I held his hand, I felt a strength I had never felt before. It wasn't you, Sterling. It was something much bigger, and it was at that moment that I knew I needed to change my own life." I was silent for a moment, absorbing his words. "So, you were also touched by the vortex?" I replied, smiling slightly. Jonas laughed, but his eyes were serious. "Maybe not like you, but enough to understand that nothing is by chance." This conversation reaffirmed what I already knew. My experience wasn't just about me. It was a reminder to everyone who was willing to listen. Today, when I look up at the sky, I still see the vortex in my mind, that portal of light and knowledge that changed everything. But now, I understand that my connection with him has not been severed. He lives in every act of kindness, in every young person who helps restore a car and restore himself. My mission is simple but powerful: to live authentically, spread compassion, and remind everyone that we are part of something infinitely bigger than ourselves. Life does not end with death, and every choice we make is a thread in the infinite tapestry of the universe. And when my time comes again, I know I'll be ready, because this time, when the vortex calls, it won't be goodbye. It will be a return home. If you like this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.